there. Welcome to Mushroom Hour. Today on Mushroom Hour, we're excited to interview Oliver Merivee. Oliver is the founder of the Fungi Academy, a paradigm-shifting community and a sacred mycology school in Guatemala located on the magical Lake Atitlán. Originally born in Estonia, Oliver embarked on a worldwide journey to explore himself, new cultures, and new ideas. He's curious about all types of fungi, but his passion really centers around magic mushrooms due to his own deep personal healing experiences. At Fungi Academy, he has taught hundreds of people how to grow their own mushrooms, edible and medicinal. Now he is sharing fungal wisdom with the Academy and online by creating transformational learning experiences for people who want to dive deeper into the world of fungi. His tribe of Fungi Academy sporiers were transformational in my own personal journey into mycology after a fateful meeting at the 2016 Pioneers Conference here in Marin County. I'm excited to learn more about their journey into creating space for a new kind of community building and mycological exploration. Oliver, it's amazing to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Darren. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it is a treat for me. Especially during these crazy times. It's really a treat to speak with you and learn about your amazing story because, I follow you online. Everything looks beautiful. You guys are doing great things. So I'm excited to hear about the growth and the community you're building. And I think it's going to inspire a lot of people. Now, where I want to start is a little personal story about Oliver. And just, you do have an interesting story starting in Estonia. So why don't we run through just a couple minutes of kind of your early life and then any influences in your family or education that may have put you where you are today or maybe not. Maybe you had to break away.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
So what was it like growing up in Estonia?
I don't have a, reference point of growing up in anywhere else. It's difficult to say. I'm guessing a lot of your listeners are in the States and in the Northern America part, but it was great. I enjoyed my life in Estonia until I lived there, and I was born in Soviet Union. When I was born, the country Estonia in its form didn't exist, and I think when I was around 5, 6, something like that, that's when Estonia became an independent sovereign country. So,
wow. Back in 2016, I met one of your friends who I believe was visiting the Bay Area from Estonia. And he said that he found Estonian culture to be a little more in tune with nature and the cycles of nature than Western society. Do you think that's true, having been exposed to both now?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I think so, yes. Because it's... a lot of it had to do with living off the land, and even in Soviet times, there wasn't an opportunity to go to the supermarket and buy your food. A lot of people were growing their own food, and also wild foraging, for instance mushrooms. It's a big part of the culture. I've done it as long as I can remember, as long as I can walk, basically. So that part now that I've been traveled around the world, I have seen it definitely that there is a little bit of more of being in tune with the nature in Estonia than maybe compared to urban areas of the United States.
Was it something passed down in your family, mushroom hunting? Was it something everyone did? I'm just curious because I actually have family roots in Latvia. My family's from Latvia, and I just recently discovered it's huge in Latvia, mushroom foraging. So is this something that was just everywhere? Everyone was picking mushrooms. Your family taught you. That's kind of how you learned?
Yeah, our families have been 7th generation of mushroom foragers. Yes and no, because I'm growing up and foraging every season mushrooms with my family, my parents and my grandparents in the local forests is not something that is unique to me. That's just part of the Estonian culture, and most people do it there. And for me, I didn't eat mushrooms until I started cultivating them. I literally didn't like the taste. They were slimy and icky, and I didn't they were not very satisfying. And so, but I really liked the process of picking them and being in the forest with family and like going around and then looking for these treasures and then finding something amazing and bringing it to my mom or my grandmother and being like, yo, can we eat this? Is this good? Did I do a good job now? And so like I helped my family to pick, but I was really against eating them. And I started eating them way later when I already had learned how to grow mushrooms. So obviously I started with magic mushrooms with Psilocybe cubensis. That was my interest in there because I didn't have so much interest in eating mushrooms. But once I did grow them, I did grow also oyster mushrooms, and after trying my own oyster mushrooms in the way that I like to eat them, I realized that I actually really like mushrooms to eating as well. And so yeah, the Estonian kind of like the childhood background is like, yes, I had interest, yes, it was part of it, but I wasn't really eating them.
I think it's really interesting to hear about that ritual, being out in the woods with your family, exploring, finding things. I think that taps into ancient parts of human DNA where we're wired to go out foraging and finding things, because I think it activates a certain part of what it is to be human. That's really important. That's helped my own mental and physical health. I think that's something that I hope we start integrating as well. You just said that really what kicked off your interest was getting into magic mushrooms. I guess tell us a little bit about that experience and maybe if that took on a special, even a spiritual significance for you working with the magic mushrooms.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew kind of curious at some point about psychedelic mushrooms. I heard about it and I heard people are doing it, and like I read stories about it on Erovid, and I was like, wow, these are some great stories. Like I would love to experience something like that. But but I also had anxiety, certain anxiety of like the unknown of what it is and what it brings. And somebody who had done them before told me through another friend that the mushrooms, the magic mushrooms, once you take them, they change you, and they change you forever. And for me, this was like like obviously there is this fear of the unknown, and this one added a little bit of anxiety. I was like, I don't know if I'm like, maybe I'm changing and I don't really like the change. Like, should I? I mean, I don't know. And so right. My curiosity got the best of me, and I tried. I picked them myself in Estonia, in a cow field. There was this famous cow field. It's been all over the news and everything. And so I picked it, and my first experience was really pleasant, and I had a really good time. I was with my girlfriend at that time, and it was nothing like ground shaking, spiritual or anything like that. But it was just really amazing, and I realized that wow, that there is definitely something in there. But the season is very short when there's mushrooms, and there's a very small location. A lot of people know about it, and so I really want to know how to grow them. And I started with a grow kit from Netherlands. You can just kind of buy them there. But at some point I realized that I cannot just go get this from the grow kit. I mean, the grow kit was amazing because like you could really see the mushrooms growing, fruiting from this tiny pin into fully grown mushrooms in a matter of days. And it was like without even getting anything out of it, the process itself was really magical and enjoyable. And so, but I was like, okay, but I want to know how to do it from beginning, from the spore to my own mushrooms, everything myself. And so I embarked on this kind of almost 2-year journey of learning, teaching myself through internet forums and whatnot, and like having some success, but not really, and messing up, and then keeping going, and eventually, learning how to do everything myself.
It's a really potent concept to think you can grow your own medicine. And I don't like to throw around the word medicine with philosophy, but I think a lot of people do come away thinking of it as kind of a therapeutic or an extremely enjoyable experience that can even help with issues like anxiety, with depression. So, I think the more and more people have that experience, they realize that if they can grow it themselves, that's really empowering themselves to play a big role in their own emotional, mental, spiritual health. So I think that path you described is really common amongst people I meet in the mycology world. A lot of people got interested through magic mushrooms, And a lot of people realize that they can empower themselves by learning this knowledge of how to grow them, because you get used to having some failures and you learn really quickly. And it is a really magical process to watch any mushroom grow. And a lot of people get into the bigger world fungi that exact way. Was that the inspiration to get you to start traveling? When did you kind of catch the bug to say, okay, maybe the magic mushrooms changed you and you got more desire to see the rest of the world and explore new ideas? Or what made you catch that bug to get out and start traveling the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, like kind of that is big part of it. And I started it a little bit before this traveling part, because until I was 18, I never traveled anywhere. And Estonia is a very, very tiny country with a population of 1.3 million. So like, I really like being like, like it's not even Bay Area. It's a smaller place that you have spent most of your life.
Right.
But I think like these two things, psychedelic medicines and traveling, has influenced me like most strongest in my life.
Yeah.
And they work very well together. Like this opening happened with the help of both of these things.
I think that's a big thing, is the opening. A lot of people I talk to that have had positive experiences with psychedelic mushrooms, they feel an opening of the heart space or an opening to new experience. It can be a key part to really changing your life or setting new directions. It makes it easier to travel places and be open to new experiences potentially.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's not only that, because like I feel like personal transformation and growth has a lot to do with the environment that we are in. And so, like there's a lot of talk about integration, for instance, right now, about how do we integrate our psychedelic experiences and stuff like that. Right. And that is something that has to do with our environment. And when you are traveling, you are constantly changing the environment, you're constantly shifting. And if you are on a path of growth yourself in your own life, then it's very easy to kind of step into these new roles, because you don't have the luggage of your own old like social circle, your own old network around you, your environment. You have you can start fresh. If you're moving, if you're, for instance, hitchhiking around, you can do that every day. You can every day be somebody like, okay, I have adjusted, I'm somebody else. And the people that meet you, the world that meets you, has no idea what you were before. So I do believe that like they both play really well together in this sense.
Yeah, in the sense of personal growth. I think that's really important to see, these things as tools for personal growth, not necessarily tools just for recreation, though maybe that's not bad, but they are really effective tools for personal growth, especially maybe you're coming from an environment of a smaller, maybe a little more isolated culture like Estonia. So to be able to use these as tools for personal growth to expand your own world, because I think a lot of people have the takeaway that they do end up having lasting effects. Once you do these things once, that sense of openness, that sense of growth and expansion outside yourself or your direct community is, in a sense, it's permanent. I think these are really important tools for personal growth, even outside of just the strictly medical context. I referenced dealing with anxiety and depression. I think they're tools for personal growth, even if it's not necessarily quote unquote medical. And I think that's an important consideration for people to have when we're talking about, should these substances be legalized or decriminalized? Should it only be for medical use? And I think it's important to see that they are tools for growth just outside of a strict medical use.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like really important to look beyond like the latest research that has been happening, because there is some really inspiring research out, like all this treatment-resistant depression and addiction relief and PTSD. There's all like super important things, and I'm really happy that the medical scientific community is very engaged right now with coming up with all these researches and these ways that we can do this. But like the truth is that the prohibition period of magic mushrooms around the planet is just a small blimp in the history of humanity that we have together with mushrooms. And I hear you when you're saying that, like it's not only for recreational, and there's also this medical side and scientific side. And I think that the most wisdom comes when we find ways of uniting the ancient and the modern scientific ways of how we approach this. And recreational. I've talked with some friends who are like in the psychedelic therapy community, and they're saying that like intentional is great, recreational is great. How about combining them together? How about intentional, recreational? Because like the healing and the growth that happens, and how do we measure that? What is the point that we're putting? Like, hey, like I like I don't know, I grew my income or something like that. It's like it's more than that. Like we're measuring life fulfillment and happiness. Like
And I guess,
feel free.
yeah, and I guess who determines if it's recreational or therapeutic? Maybe it should be both. Maybe
Exactly.
like you're saying, how can you separate the two? Maybe the effect it has is inherently both those things.
Yeah, and also the accessibility of it, because like the medical models that we have right now that kind of suggesting and the direction where it's going, it doesn't really promise a lot of access. And that doesn't, obviously like all these concepts of like harm reduction and doing it in a smart way. And I absolutely agree with this. But
Right.
I find that there is skills that everybody can learn, so that we can do peer supported psychedelic journey work. We can find ways of how we can help ourselves and our community, our loved ones, with skill sets that we don't need to be, psychedelic therapists. That is not super accessible for anybody, and it has been happening already thousands for years anyway. So like, how about we, learn from both of these worlds?
Well, absolutely. And it's the kind of thing where now it's so big in our collective consciousness where we're not going to be able to keep these substances suppressed forever. So making sure people do have access to create that all important peer group that isn't necessarily a separate class of, psychedelic therapist or medical professional, but to have enough access where everyone can develop their own knowledge around these substances, their own experiences. That's really how you develop a community that is able to make sure responsible use happens, that these don't get in the hands of people that shouldn't use it. It's just having more knowledge and more use makes these things safer in my mind. That's how I see it.
Yeah, the more dialogue, more conversation we have around it, the more it is really accessible, and people will find inspiration from ancient and from modern ways. I think we can have a healthy, let's say, like psychedelic education that is available to most people.
Absolutely. And it's one of the most powerful consciousness changing effects on the planet. So let's not suppress it. Let's explore it and, get comfortable with it. Get comfortable with some of the mystery, but also just get comfortable with something that, isn't kept in the dark.
Yeah.
And I think we see that happening. Honestly, I think we see that happening in a huge way. I brought up that issue of, do you medicalize it? Do you just legalize it and give access? And there's arguments everywhere along, but I think you verbalized really well about kind of the path that seems to be the best path to kind of making sure people can use these as they need to, but also make sure that there's safe and responsible use. And I think all that comes with access and familiarity with the substances.
Yeah, and also like kind of like leaning on the wealth of experience that we have from the psychedelic elders nowadays, because in the 60s when it came to the West, psychedelic movement, it was super new, and it was just like like the elder generation didn't know anything. If you don't have an experience, the young people had nothing to talk about. There's no way you would possibly understand what's going on. But now we have like a strong psychedelic elders community, and I think really it's smart to tap into the wisdom of the people who have been doing this for decades now.
Pivoting over to the Fungi Academy, obviously you were on your own journey of personal growth, both with these mushrooms we're talking about and with travel. So how did you end up in Guatemala, and how did the Fungi Academy form?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long journey. It was 5 years I was traveling around the world, and not that I was constantly in movement. Obviously, I was somewhat stationary also in periods. I was in Australia, I was in Southeast Asia, in the States, in Mexico, and eventually let's say like this, through a series of synchronistic occasions, it seemed to be very clear that the world wants me to be here doing this.
So there's always some set of synchronicities that put us right where we're supposed to be. And usually if we're in tune, we can kind of pick up the signs that let you know, like, yes, this is right where I'm supposed to be. When you first told me the story, you had some pretty vivid imagery of Oliver and his mates, in loincloths in the middle of the jungle, trying to build bamboo furniture to start working with mushrooms. So what were the early days of the Fungi Academy like? You got to Guatemala, you said, okay, the universe has put me here for a reason. And then how did you get started even thinking about making this kind of community based around mushrooms?
I mean, when I was traveling on my travels, I had some experiences already in living in a community, for instance, and obviously had also experiences growing mushrooms. And so at some point, I did a personal inventory of my life, of what makes me happy, what do I truly love doing. And it wasn't about how do I make my money, it was just like what makes me happy, what I love doing.
Right.
And amongst these things was like living in a community, co-creating in a community, growing mushrooms, also, traveling, music. There was learning things. Like I really enjoy learning new things. And so I put them down, and I realized that like when I have a chance to be stationary somewhere a little bit, like in a communal environment, I would love to grow mushrooms in there. But I know that it's something, like if I'm starting from zero and I want to do everything myself, it might take me 2-3 months. And so I need to be at least somewhat stationary. But I just had this. I had this list of things, and that was it. And then things just started falling into place, like insane opportunities, coincidences came from different places, and I had no plan of coming to Guatemala. I mean, I had no plan of even coming to Mexico or United States. It just so happened somebody said like, okay, you gotta come here. I'm gonna buy you a ticket now to United States. Come here, and so I did. And then through a series of different coincidences, I realized that I'm supposed to go Mexico now because somebody says like, oh, I'm going to Mexico. You want to come with me? It's south. You want to go south? I'm like, yeah, okay. And during this journey, at some point, I ran out of my finances. I was zero. I was in Mexico. I had nothing, but I already like hitchhiked like a little bit without money. And it wasn't the first time that I ran out completely to zero. There was not this existential angst of like, oh my God, I'm gonna starve to death. I was like, no, it's gonna work out. It's gonna be fine. And just pay attention, listen, like be connected. And so I started hitchhiking with another friend who also, the deal was that he needs to get rid of his money, and we're going to be doing it without any money at all. And our goal is somewhere, we're going to the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and because we haven't ever been there before, and we just want to do the process of traveling and hitchhiking without money and learn Spanish while doing this. And so that was all we had. And it was really curious because it wasn't like that, oh, I have a credit card that I can take money out of, or I can, like, I don't know, call my mom, or like I had nothing. It was zero. And it's such a difference being in a place of like having very little bit and having nothing. Very little bit is such a grind. Having nothing is amazing. It's like having like the faith and seeing how you're supported every day. Like your bowl is empty. If it's empty and you need to eat, it will be filled every day. And it happens through not just that, like, oh, it happens through magical ways. And so it was this magical journey that we started, and it took us a month to travel through Mexico and get to Guatemala. And we got to Guatemala because at some point, this friend of mine was talking with, he convinced someone in an internet shop to use the computer for a moment. And he talked with his ex-girlfriend and found out that ex-girlfriend and her friends are in Guatemala in this place, Lake Atitlán. I mean, Lake Atitlán has a bunch of villages around, and it was just somewhere. They're somewhere here, and they're gonna be leaving in a week or something like that. And he was kind of strange, and I'm like, yo, brother, like, if you feel that you have some kind of like unfinished business with this woman, then there is no plan. I don't have no plans. I have nowhere I need to go. We can go to this Lake Atitlán in Guatemala, and so we did. And And when we got here, like, just we synchronistically came exactly the right village. We came to an event, all the girlfriend and all of the friends just walked in one by one. They didn't understand how this is possible, that we just came like this in the first, like 5 minutes that we got to the San Marcos village. We found them immediately, and they didn't even know that they're coming. Like, it was just insane. And we felt so in tune with the universe, with nature.
Yeah.
Because, like, every day there was reasons of being grateful. Because, like, if somebody out of their kindness gives you food, and in Mexico you cannot even drink tap water, even water, you have to get it from the kindness of the people, because they have a good heart. And so that gave so many opportunities of being grateful. And I feel that was the main force of magic that brought us here to Lake Atitlán. And that year, like, I made some connections, but the Fungi Academy didn't start that year. I came back a year later with another Estonian friend, and then we started it together in this moment. And I mean, the other friend who I first came here, who were hitchhiking without money, they are now married and have a child with that woman.
That is just a magical story, and I love that you're picking up these energies that a lot of people, as we become more and more aware, a lot of people want to tap into, and that is this energy of just having gratitude, and that is this energy of trusting in synchronicity, trusting that you'll be put where you need to go. But it's hard for us always to do that. We know these things, and you having your adventure have kind of lived experiencing how these energies or these forces can get you through and put you where you need to be. But it's hard sometimes to see that, and it might have to do with our attachment to material things, even if it is just a little bit. Maybe it's having that attachment to, even if we don't have much, that kind of throws you off from being in tune with the pure essence of synchronicity and being really tuned into that, because you're distracted by those material things and those material considerations. And maybe we're too much in our brain thinking about how am I going to stretch out this little bit of money to get what I need to get. Whereas if you don't have any, it becomes your currency is those energies, is that paying attention to synchronicity, is that, communing with people without exchanging money to a place where they see your good energy. Because that's, as humans, we all want to be seen and sent good energy. So if you do that, someone could give you something you need to keep going, whether it's water or food, and then you give them back gratitude. So it's almost like when you get rid of the man-made currency, you tap into this spiritual and emotional currency at really the heart of what it is to be human all around you.
Yeah, and I do feel that there is an exchange happening in this, like, always. And like, people are giving from their generosity, but like, I am, like you said, genuine gratitude. I saw what it did to people. If because like, not always there was some synchronicity that gave us food. Sometimes we didn't, and we literally made a stop of our hitchhiking, went to the market of a small village somewhere on the road, and we begged. We went from food stall to food stall and asked, like, yo, do you have some vegetables, fruits that maybe have stains that you cannot sell tomorrow anymore? We are traveling without money, we're hitchhiking, like, we are hungry. And so more than often people were so happy to help. They were, yes, of course, please, like, have. And our rule at that time was that we only take what we need for this day. Whatever it is, we never take more. Only for this day. Tomorrow, the universe will take care of us. And sometimes people gave us money, and then we're like, thank you. We bought food for that moment, that day only. And if we had anything left over, we gave it to the people on the streets, like if there's some homeless people or whatnot. And so, like, that was the purpose of it. But I strongly felt that energy of gratitude, because, like, self-esteem is something that a lot of people are struggling with. And if you get true, genuine gratitude from somebody because of your kindness, you start believing that you're a kind person, that you're a good person, and maybe there is a little bit of an opening there of also, like, self-acceptance and self-love. So I definitely saw that this was an exchange. It wasn't just like, hey, like, I'm bored here, like, help me. It was like there was an energy exchange happening, and it was magical.
Yeah, and Ram Dass talks about that in his books about service, like How Can I Help, where he talks about the act of people getting to be of service in that way almost gives to them more deeply on those levels you're talking about. So you were kind of giving people the opportunity to provide service, which gives to themselves spiritually. It's like I said, it's tapping into these invisible currencies that we can all feel and we all are aware of. You know, that's something that I think in our own culture we need to figure out how to balance the material, and then how to balance the understanding of those subtler energies at play, and the interaction with people that doesn't have to involve material things but can still be hugely beneficial and uplifting to everyone involved. And that really gets to, you know, the heart of community, right? Is having a community where you give to each other without having to exchange material things or money.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you bring up service, because I do think that is one of the pillars of individual and also communal happiness. Because like, as long as we are focused only on our own personal gain, what is it in it for me, and we're working on this kind of like a very egocentrical level, I feel that like the true happiness kind of escapes us. And so like service is something that, like, I've been even using it literally in some of my psychedelic journeys with mushrooms, when I've had challenging moments of like, I just get super stuck in my head, and I'm like, and all this anxiety and whatnot, and this shadow patterns come up, and then I realized, and then you brought up also, you know, Ram Dass, and exactly that part, you know, serve others, love others, and like, and I remember that, okay, I need to do that, like that's the only way out. And so I go and, you know, bring some firewood to the ceremony for the other people, and cut some fruit, and suddenly I feel amazing. I feel just great, and I'm not stuck in my own little like story of myself and my anxieties and whatnot, you know. So like, I do feel that this is really a powerful tool, and it's something that we can use as a practice. As gratitude is something we can use as a practice, so is service. And in a communal environment, like both of these things, like, you know, like appreciation of others is something that builds a really nice community. Like wanting to serve others and doing things like that's something that builds a nice community. That's an environment you want to live in. And I don't just mean like an intentional community like a Fungi Academy. I mean like more, because like we have here also in this village of Tsununa, where we right now are, we have local indigenous neighbors around, and how can we do that? How can we appreciate them, and how can we be of service when it's needed, especially in this time, you know? Yeah. So like, I do feel that these are the pillars of a healthy community.
And I think they are pillars that you can put into any community and see immediate benefit. And I think it's really important that you bring up, you know, these aren't just applicable in intentional community where you have your tribe of like-minded people that are all pretty much on the same page, they're all pretty open and trusting to each other, but expanding that outward to a community, you know, and I'm thinking of our modern westernized communities where it is very impersonal and it's very centered on the individual driving to secure something for themselves or their family. Even if the rest of the society is running in a way that isn't focused on service and gratitude, if you implement those into your own day-to-day life, can have an improvement on the immediate surrounding community. And I love that you brought up service as something that's a tool for mental health too. I think a lot of people struggle with anxiety. A lot of people struggle with all the thoughts about, you know, the negative self-talk that we have in our head. And it's true. You find that if you immediately say, okay, how can I be of service to someone, that you kind of shift yourself out of that and you end up in a more positive place. So I just love everything you're saying. Now, talking about the Fungi Academy and the community you're building there with obviously these principles all at play, who are the people at Fungi Academy? How are people getting brought together?
Yeah. First, sure. Yeah, we're doing our best to apply these principles, but at the same time, you know, like we are all human still. So like there is a lot of humanness and growth that happens, and there is living together in a communal environment. There is and doing it for a longer period, more than just like a couple of months, is something that really makes you meet your own shadow as well. There is no escape from it. To see these people every day, and your own things come up in that. And for me, definitely, it has been a personal journey on this, and this service and gratitude, appreciation and self-love, growth. These are these are great values, but it's a journey. It's not like, hey guys, we are here in Fungi Academy, we did it. We are all service and gratitude and self-love now. So come here. It's like, it's not that.
It's not utopia right away.
Exactly. We have like good ideals, but like it's a process, and but at the same time, it's a very worthy and a very satisfying process. So the people come from all around the world. Literally, we are right now here in this time of kind of, well, first of all, it's a low season, and second of all, it's a no season because of like the quarantine and like the stuff that's happening. So we are here around 10 people right now, 10, 11, something like that. And there are different people, obviously, like a lot of us are interested in mushrooms and everything that can happen with mushrooms, like living a healthier, happier life, whatnot. But also it's about generally like learning, because it's the concept of having an intentional living and learning space because it's not just that like, hey, in the 4 years that we're doing this, we've teached all these people and we have all this experience how to teach, and now come here and we are all teachers now. Like everybody who comes here brings something of value, and it's a space to share. And so like I truly feel that there is this collective kind of growing together and learning from each other's experiences, this cross-pollination that is happening in an environment like this. So that's what a lot is happening here, and the people are literally like, yeah, from North America, from Latin America, from Europe. There's been people from where's the country with Abu Dhabi?
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, people from China. Like there's been like literally like hundreds and hundreds of people in the last 4 years coming through, and it's such an enriching, fertile soil to experience life together with all of these different people from so many different backgrounds.
Yeah. Now, what does a day in the life at Fungi Academy look like? This is something I'm really curious about, because you do get such a mixture of interesting people. Obviously you have your own projects you're working on within the academy, but what does a day in the life of Fungi Academy look like?
Well, so we have somewhat of a loose structure that has to do with our weeks. So we have on Mondays a community meeting. We first come together with the core group people, meaning people who've been here living already for like longer time and are part of the longer time vision. And then we come to the same page. We discuss what is important this week, what happened last week, what do we need to bring to everybody else. And then later after the lunch, we're having a community circle where we're not just that we're giving these announcements, what's happening this week and what's going on, but we also check in with absolutely everybody of like, where are you right now? What's the inner weather? What's the emotional weather that's happening inside of you? And so that you are being seen and you're being heard. So it's about, transparency and authenticity, because we don't need to be every day just like putting a mask of smile on a face, like everything is fine. It's not about that. It's about how real we can be with each other, and if we can be truly authentic and vulnerable to each other as well when it does sometimes get challenging, and we have like personal challenges, whatnot, then that's where trust is born. Like once we have trust, we can do very powerful things together. And obviously we're sharing the good times and the fun times and the celebration as well, but that's one of the structures that we have, that on Mondays we come together and we truly listen to each other. One person talks, other persons listen, and then we give a download of what's happening, what are the projects happening. We have different departments. We have gardening department that is super important right now. We find it's part of community resilience is to grow our own food. Mm-hmm. And then we have mushroom department that is growing food, but also medicines. And that, once again, that has suddenly become even more important with the current state of the world. And then some kitchen and some digital projects. We're also working right now on an online course. So we're dividing our works, and then everybody gets an upload, and then we kind of continue with our communal work. So sometimes you might be working on a kitchen service, making food for community. We eat together. We have kind of 2 meals plus a breakfast sometimes. Right now, a lot of people have a lot of time, so we make more meals, and we try to eat together. It's not something that we always do, but like at least in a week, there is definitely a few meals that we're eating together. And then we go about our things. Do some mushroom grow kits, plant some gardens, and once again, then our day kind of ends with a dinner. And right now we've been doing movie nights, watching the fantastic Fungi. That's incredible.
Absolutely, everyone should see that movie.
Exactly, and so like or making sauna or like doing a fire and making a song circle or whatnot. So there are definitely things that like I feel that the big advantage of living in a community in times like this, because you have people who support you around you, and you can celebrate, and your social needs are met. So so that's kind of in a nutshell the day in the life of Fungi Academy.
The community you're building, especially in these times where we are seeing the bigger, more complex systems of kind of the larger dominant society coming into question or being destabilized, we're finding that our individual communities aren't as resilient because we don't have that trusted communication necessarily with our neighbors right in our little local town or greater community. We don't necessarily have that food security aspect of things, which I do think is so critically important. I know so many people during this whole virus quarantine have realized they need to get back and start growing things. It kind of triggered the survival mechanism in people to realize, like, yeah, I need my own food. So I think there are a lot of takeaways from your model that build these resilient communities. And what I wonder is, if all of those values maybe can't be applied as effectively over a huge area and a huge number of people, but maybe we start moving to a system where we have these smaller communities that are focused on local food resiliency, that are focused on local communication and trust building. Maybe that can't happen with 10 million people, but it can happen with 100 people. And then we have this decentralized network of these resilient communities that's kind of a more a more effective human society that really gives to the human aspects of us, not kind of feeding an economic machine.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's part to kind of understand is that like communal living in the kind of the same household or in the same property is not maybe that is absolutely for everybody, or it is not something that needs to be for you like full time, because like you can do it part time as well, like have half a year here and then live your urban life somewhere. So, but I do think it's definitely one of the solutions that is out there, and it's offering exactly like you're saying, this kind of this network of communities, because like we are just like one thing here, and where we are living around us, there is a couple of permaculture communities, there is a naturopathy place, there is a dance temple, there is this yoga communities, there is all of these different flavors and different diversity that really I feel enriches the grander, bigger community that we're all part of it, because like we can be part of this. We communicate with these places. We go, we celebrate, we have fun, we learn together, and so it's not about kind of like building your own little empire somewhere, and that's the ultimate solution, and everybody should be doing it the same way or join you or whatnot. So like I do believe that this diversity that it offers us gives us chances to choose the flavor that we like. For instance, like this place is like our rental agreement is like no drugs, no alcohol on the property, and it's fine. And a lot of people like really enjoy that. And so, but some other places there is this part of it. They are like finding conscious ways of celebrating with alcohol, and it's completely fine. I mean, like I can hear my neighbor here who has like a permaculture place. I can hear him doing like karaoke nights and singing, and people are like having a few beers and they're completely enjoying it. It's a completely valid way of making a community. There is not one way that is the right way. And I do think that like one of the ways that we can become more resilient is exactly through that, through diversity. If we are as a diverse culture and there is, for instance, intentional communities are part of it, then that definitely grows the resilience and then what is possible, what kind of lifestyle is possible.
And the last time you were in the Bay Area, the last time I saw you in person, you talked about other intentional communities, and I believe there was a book or a list about the different communities. Maybe it was just nationally or maybe it was internationally. And so I guess, have you drawn inspiration from other parts? And just to tell people a little bit more about the kind of this whole network of communities that are out there, across the globe.
Yeah, I mean, this is not some kind of fad or like a little niche thing. It's happening, and it's happening really strong and smart right now. You can see people being empowered and using the skills that they have gotten from, maybe their lives for their salary jobs, and using them in powerful ways to create communities around the world in different locations, in different forms. And so two resources I would point people towards. One is IC.org, IC like I and C, intentional communities. And there is a whole global list. You can choose it by country. In the United States, you can choose it by state, by the form of how they're existing, what's their governance. And there is also Gen Network. You can check out Gen Network as well. It says this global eco-village network. So these and many other resources, if you want to make something that is, I think sustainability is like the base where you want to start with, but at the same time, give yourself the patience to become sustainably, because so many good projects break apart because of ideologies that they cannot sustainably do it. And so look at this as a long game. If you're building a lifestyle for yourself and for the people around you, then look at it as something that's happening and as a process. And it's a huge learning experience in the beginning, because we in the West, we have not been used to living constantly together, most of us, with other people, and in such ways that it's actually functional and we're enjoying this. And so a lot of us have to face some sides of ourselves. And so it is a beautiful way of doing some self-work and growth. And at the same time, there is around the world already projects and communities and eco-villages who've been doing it for decades and doing it very successfully, and have integrated all these different aspects of how to do governance, what's the social structure like, how do they make themselves, sustainable financially, for instance. Is it the financial system at all? Do you grow everything yourself, or do you still are you part of also the financial system? And so there is a wealth of knowledge available, and anybody who does anything right now, if you're starting your own business or starting your project, or if you're learning a new language or whatnot, it is very smart to learn from the collective experience of humanity and see what's already being done. Because one of the ways that it's definitely you see more failure is when people focus on their own ideologies and their own vision only, and they don't see what is already being made. And so I think it's very important to learn from other people's success and mistakes.
So many of us, when we get frustrated with the society, and I'm talking from a very North American mindset, but you get frustrated with this society that doesn't seem to speak to a lot of human needs, or as a byproduct causes a lot of human suffering. We seem to care more about money and production and efficiency and these things that some of us don't think are the most important parts of being human. And you get really frustrated and you want to rebel, or you want to, like you say, go out on your own and it's important to recognize that there are people building alternative ways of living in community and alternative ways of creating systems that might not be perfect right away. It might not be that ideal community you want where you're totally disconnected from the society you don't like right out of the gate. You might have to build to get there, and you might have to figure out ways to kind of grow your movement. And so I think I really wanted to bring that up, and I'm glad you just dropped kind of a knowledge bomb on us with intentional communities, because I think it is important for people to be able to see there are other options. And you don't necessarily need to tear down the system you don't like or focus on how much you hate the system you don't like. And instead, you can focus on people doing positive things to build systems that sound like something you'd rather be a part of, and see where you can take inspiration, or maybe where. I think that's really important right now, because especially during this time, I see a lot of people dissatisfied with the current system, wanting to pull away from it. And let's turn our attention toward, existing systems that we can learn from and interact with. And I think it'll be a much more positive development.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said it also, but like this kind of like rebelliousness and like I say, like disconnecting yourself from the mainstream society is like, these are like, they're nice ideas maybe, and they definitely, sometimes this energy is needed to get started. But like at the end, like rebelliousness needs always a side to be rebellious towards, and it's not standing up on its own. It's not a sustainable way of looking at it. And so like, and I've seen it in my growth through the community and other people who are coming through and other communities as well. And it's not about like just like rebelling against something. Sometimes you need it to get away from this inertia of the mainstream society. You kind of need it a little bit, like this, going through this teenage period of your own, like, I don't know, like finding your own way. Yeah. But actually I do see that like right now the strength in this movement of like communities and generally like life affirming ways of living, I think the strength in it is the way that we connect, not the way that we disconnect. And being it mainstream community, society or alternative, it doesn't matter, but it's more about connecting than disconnecting.
Is there one or two communities in general that you've drawn a lot of inspiration from? Obviously, other than Fungi Academy, which inspires a lot of people, but are there any other communities worldwide that you've seen that you really think are, embodying a lot of great principles that people could check out that have inspired you?
Well, I mean, one of my main inspirations in the beginning was my own experience living in Australia in a community that doesn't exist anymore. It was Digger Street, and it was, it was where I was, I think, like 9 months or something like that. And I got like my first-hand experience from that. But since then, I have looked into other projects, and I'm curious of what makes a community sustainable and regenerative in a long-term run. So I've been looking at places that have been doing it for, 10, 20, 30 years, maybe more. And so some of the highlights around the world that I really recommend people to check into that. And I think is Findhorn in Scotland. There is Dancing Rabbit Eco Village in United States. There is also The Farm in the United States, which has a very interesting story, and it started off from a very kind of hippie rainbow movement almost, and then like turned into this fully functional, powerful place that like people are living their lives in a very good ways. And so that then there is a Tamara community in Portugal, founded by some German people. There is Damanhur in Italy, and there is like a grand, like basically a village in India, the Auroville. And I'm sure there is like a bunch of more, just like they don't come immediately, but like these are some of the good ones to start checking into what are they doing, and also like I talk with different community elders, people who have already lived for decades in the community, and just like look for the things that work, but maybe also that don't work. Like what are the main reasons that communities fall apart? And like I got, like according to one elder, I got 3 really good ones, 3 kind of things to look into. There are territorial reasons, meaning that you are in a community that has communal spaces, but there has to be a clear distinction what is communal and what is private, because community isn't that we are all, everything is everybody's. And I mean, some places have these values and maybe it works for them, but like a lot around the world, what has made things sustainable is that people have their private space as well. If this is your full-time living place, like a community, then, maybe without a family and being a young person starting off, you can do it a little bit your own, but then eventually you will need a private space. So the balance between and also like understanding and who is putting most energy into which parts of the community, which means these people have they have more privileges in that area because of their commitment, their contribution, and that means that these people are also more territorial. For instance, if you, Darren, are here living in Fungi Academy and you've been working on this mushroom growing bed with vegetables for 3 months, and you've been doing everything and building the soil and the mycelium, and then somebody comes and he's been here for 2 days and digs it up and he's like, oh no, actually I want to put flowers here. So it doesn't, you become very territorial, although it's a communal space, but so like this is important, territorial reasons. Second reason is sexual reasons, or like the relationships that we're having, because if you're living together with people and there are couples and they're not couples, and then there's maybe there is not clarity what's happening, is it monogamous, is it poly, what's going on, and then like couples form and couples break apart also inside the community, and then maybe new couples form with new people. So like that's a huge thing that can bring a lot of emotional turmoil, and it's better if community has ways of dealing with this. Like for instance, Tamara community eco-village in Portugal has really good ways of dealing with that specifically. And the third reason is quite easy one, and it's something that like a lot of young people, when they first start thinking about community life, they're kind of rebelling against is financial reasons. You think that like money is something that you can escape, or the financial system that you see that is not working or whatnot, that you somehow can deny it and not do it. But the fact is that if you run out of money and you haven't already built a whole fully sustainable system of food, medicine, everything around that, which takes some time, like it's a process, then you don't have a community anymore. So like being really like coming to peace with what money means to you, and which are the ways that you can bring in abundance so that you can share it with your community, and at the same time you can serve the people who are willing to do business, for instance, with you, because that seems to be a common thing with the communities that are lasting for a long time, that are still going for right now. They have figured that out. They have multiple community businesses and they are doing it in a good way, and they're doing something that they believe in. It's not like a sacrifice of, okay, we need money, let's do something dirty. No, we really believe in what we're doing and the value that it brings to the world. So these three things I would bring in as kind of guidelines.
I see a lot of the big issues I've heard of in communities in the past being addressed just in those three areas. And especially when you talk the financial, I think that's just such a key piece, especially when you're talking about a system that's dominated by money, that is the prevalent system. Of course, when you're creating something new out of that, you're going to have some symbiotic relationship with the existing dominant paradigm in order to nurture and grow your own system. So if you do stand on, morals or a dislike of money too strongly, it's going to starve you out from taking the resources you need out of the dominant paradigm to feed your growing new community. So I think that's such an important one to consider. All of those are hugely inspirational, and I think people are going to find a lot of takeaways there. And hopefully everyone will be able to now go start a great community themselves.
Or maybe also join a community, because communities are not made by a single individual. Communities are made by collectives of like people who believe in each other and trust and believe in the vision. So like I think that's another part. There's so much already out there, and if you feel that you need to create one, I highly recommend checking out these websites that I gave, the Gen Network and the IC.org, and visit a few of these places first and live there a little bit and get an idea of what makes these places work or not work. So there is so many opportunities for volunteers, for work exchange, for whatnot, so that you can actually go and check these places out and realize more of what it is that you really need.
And I appreciate you basically laying out a roadmap for how to navigate, especially for people that haven't come across this information before, or alternative communities, or kind of have one image in their head, the Americanized image of kind of the hippie commune. I think it's really important to lay out the fundamental principles and the realities surrounding these things in a way that's really tangible and approachable for people. A huge education. Just circling back to the Fungi Academy really quick, what are some of the projects that are currently going on with Fungi Academy? I want to showcase some of the work you guys are doing right now, even in the midst of kind of global calamity.
Global calamity, yeah. So some of the things that are happening here is right now we're optimizing our fruiting room, the place that we actually grow our mushrooms inside, and the process around that, because we have in this new location that we have been somewhat, I think we've been like 8 months here or something like that. This is the third version of Fungi Academy, and in this place we have dialed in our lab side of all the mycelium production, everything that has to do with that, and now we're trying to really increase our production so that we would have more food and more medicine for ourselves. So that's like a big one that's happening. Then obviously this making gardens absolutely everywhere. That's what's happening, and people seem to be super excited about it. That's another one is happening. We are also getting medicinal mushrooms to people in the local community around here, because right now that is the way that we're keeping ourselves sustainable. Because before, what we did mainly was we did physical workshops and courses, and that's where most of our income came in from. Obviously right now people are not traveling, and that is not happening, but luckily we had our medicinal mushroom business that was just popping out, and we really engaged that one. So that is working super well now. It's growing, and I will see how it really works. And right now there's so many people who are like, you can't go to restaurant, you can't go to parties, you can't whatever, retreats, but hey, you can take care of your health, and that's great. And one of my main focuses right now that we're working on is an online sacred mycology school. So we want to bring everything that we've been learning here in Fungi Academy in the past 4 years, like teaching hundreds of people and more, and like joining in with other citizen mycologists, with people who are psychedelic luminaries, psychedelic educations, herbalists, people who work with medicinal mushrooms, and bring this knowledge with the medium of online courses to the world. This has been happening already. We were doing it and planning and getting towards it before this global calamity, but right now it has become obvious that like this is really necessary. Like this is exactly how we build resilience in our individual lives and in our communities, by having our own food, having our own medicine, and also including psychedelic medicine, taking care of our mental health and our physical health and everything. So we are coming up with an online sacred mycology school, and we're right now building it. We are shooting videos for it. We are coming up with campaigns, building a network around this, reaching out to guest teachers who are different experts in different fields in this. Hopefully right now, because we have time and we have focus for that more than ever, it's really, I feel this situation right now, the silver lining, the blessing, it is like how much focus we have, how important suddenly it seems to be. And with that time now, we are fully working to launch this, hopefully at the end of May.
Well, I'm definitely going to be on the lookout for that. I love the idea that you guys are building an online knowledge base for people. And it's always so great to feel like the things that you're passionate about, the principles that you've tried to embody, disciplines you've tried to embody, like growing mushrooms and spreading medicinal mushrooms, only get more important at the most important times. I think it just illustrates really well of how meaningful the work you guys are doing is, and it embodies so many of these concepts, like being of service to other people, but also embodies that idea of you guys kind of being adaptive as a community to make sure those financial needs are met, and putting it in a place where it can still thrive despite the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the financial thing is definitely important, and it's something that all of us need to be thinking about. Most people need to be in touch with money one way or the other, but like, just to be honest, I would do that even if I wouldn't get paid for that. I would still do that.
Right.
It's more than that. I feel like living a healthy, fulfilled life has to do with like figuring it out. What do you love doing? How do you love serving the world and other people, and just do that.
Which it's amazing that you guys have been so abundant and been able to, that now you're able to really help the local community in times of need, it speaks to the atmosphere you're kind of cultivating there.
It's the same thing that we kind of in the beginning of this interview started talking about, of like being of service and stuff. So it's not like it's purely altruistic and all this, and the Western messiahs are coming to save the local indigenous people or something like that. It's not about that. It's about when the situation started globally and like the lockdown came and people were just afraid, anxious, not certain what's happening, overwhelmed, like all of this stuff was going around. There was also a lot of like bitterness and a lot of different things. And so for me, the same thing happened to me during this psychedelic journey with mushrooms, of like, okay, I feel a little bit anxious, and like coming and making these community circles inside our community, I feel people are anxious, and we're kind of like just feeding each other's anxiety. And I realized that I just need to find ways of serving others. And truth is that if my neighbors are not safe, if my neighbors are not healthy, neither am I. I think that's another lesson of the fungi, this mycelium network that is covering the forest floor and supporting all the trees, all the plants that are around there, because the fungi realizes that in an ecosystem that is thriving and that is healthy, the fungi is thriving and is healthy. And so like it also has very, I would say, self-centered reasons of why to help others, because like it makes you feel better. It gets your focus away from yourself and all the issues that are going around. And it really like cleans something. There's a certain remediation that happens in your heart when this goes on. It also makes the community stronger around you, which is good for everybody who lives in that community.
If one of the biggest takeaways from our whole interview is that being of service is just the best thing you could do in almost every scenario, not only for other people, but also for yourself. And I love that analogy about the mycelium, because that's exactly right. We've talked a lot about the current projects and what's going on now, but what do you see, if you can project it all, what do you see as kind of the future for Fungi Academy?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, and we've been visioning here with the Fungi core team, and the vision that we see. I cannot even put like a time frame for it, because there is the timing that I think that things should happen. Sometimes this timing also comes with impatience and whatnot, but there is also like kind of divine timing and surrendering into the flow of how the things that you intend to happen are happening. And so I see also an eco-village, a bigger place that has room for people to live and learn for at least a couple of 100 people. That is sustainable in its food production, but it's an attractive platform in the same way that like Fungi Academy is, that it has educational and kind of scientific facilities to obviously work with fungi, but also with other kind of life affirming technologies and sciences around the world that can be beneficial to our ecosystems, to our individual lives and whatnot. I'm envisioning a center, an eco-village, a center that attracts the best minds of this world that want to come together and work on social issues, on environmental issues, on whatever, even individual issues, in an environment that is truly like motivating and inspiring, and together with people from around the world, that through cross-pollination can happen in this environment. So yeah, I'm looking for a future where there is educational hub, center, and an eco-village.
And I think your own life experience has illustrated really well that you get really clear about that vision, then kind of get out of your own way, trust in the universe, put forward right action, and it can happen. So have faith that that's exactly what you're going to do. Who knows the timeline, but I have faith that's exactly what you're going to do. And I'm excited for it, and I already want to go.
Thank you, Darren. I just want to say that your faith is part of the magical energy that will manifest this. So the more people who believe in this and the more people who have faith, the more likely it is that it comes into life.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up here, is there any other topics you want to bring up? Any projects, anything we might have missed that's important to your story or the Fungi Academy story?
Not really, actually. I think I feel quite complete. I mean, the only aspect is like we started from magic mushrooms with the sacred mushrooms, and I do really feel that like humanity will find a way sooner rather than later to reintegrate these very powerful allies from the nature into our lives and into our mainstream society also, in ways that is actually beneficial and healthy, and that we can really use, amazing, tremendous inspiration and healing and also like connection that can come from that. This is the honest truth. The honest truth is that like without the sacred mushrooms, Fungi Academy wouldn't exist, and I wouldn't be in my life where I'm now. Since we've been putting out this online sacred mycology school, we've been in touch with people around the world who are already kind of signing up, and then they're writing their stories, why mushrooms are important for them, and what's the personal relationship and what has happened. And reading these stories, I realize like how important it is. If you truly like live 7 years in depression because grieving your son who died, and then suddenly, boom, everything changes. You have your life back, and not only you have your life back, you are a shining, radiant example to others of how this is possible, and like your life suddenly brings more joy and happiness to others as well. And these are, these are not like individual standout stories. There are a bunch of these stories out there, and I do see that living in a community or living a future that is more resilient or building it together has to do with that aspect of yourself as well, of how do you come to this place of like you are in service, but like what has to happen before you're in service? Are you grateful of being alive? Do you appreciate everything that you already have? Because that's a really good place to start. Do you love yourself? Do you accept yourself, and do you love yourself? Because like if you don't accept yourself, if you don't love yourself, if you don't take care of yourself, then it's almost impossible to take care of anybody else, the environment, anything like that. Because like I do think even myco-remediation starts with remediating our own hearts. And once you have that, once you have self-love and acceptance, you basically have everything. You then you can do whatever. You suddenly become effective, you become powerful, you become also in service to others. And all of these things I feel come out from there. And for me, and also for a lot of people, it has started from either sacred mushrooms or other plant medicines.
I always tell people with my work that I'm not, the psychedelic expert. A lot of people ask me about psilocybin mushrooms, and I kind of direct them to other resources. However, being in this community and talking to as many people as I have now, it is undeniable to hear the impact that psilocybe or other psychedelic containing mushrooms have on people's life trajectory, and how it seems to initiate a lot of inner work. And I think you just said it beautifully, that without kind of that constant inner work on self-acceptance, that dealing with one's shadow, these are very powerful archetypal inner consciousness work that psychologists and spiritual teachers from every stripe have talked about throughout human history. And it's something that I think nowadays we don't take seriously enough. And hearing people's experience with mushrooms, kind of initiating that work, it's kind of undeniable, this positive effect that it seems to have on people. Obviously, with all the caveats about responsible use, set and setting, integration, all those very important elements of the experience.
And obviously, like, mushrooms are not the only way of doing this kind of work. There is many tools out there, and some of them are plant medicines, but some of them are also breath work, journaling, just living a healthy life. There is so many tools out there, and I do think that sacred mushrooms are specifically a very unique tool because it offers us a glimpse, has this potential and a very high potential if you're doing it in a educated way. If you have the skills of how to do that, it can give you the experience of being connected to nature and also like starting your path of self-healing. And this is true for, whatever, ayahuasca, maybe LSD, maybe peyote, you name it. There is tons of tools out there, and I don't want to downplay any of these. They're all really important ones for me. My medicine is mushroom. But mushrooms is something that is accessible and is sustainable. If we look at it in a global scale, then if we imagine like, 10, 20, 30, 50, whatever years in the future where humanity has reintegrated psychedelics, plant medicines, sacred mushrooms I do feel that mushrooms are one of the most important parts there right now, because we cannot all fly into Amazon to drink the brew in there, or we cannot all have peyote because takes 10 years to grow, and it lives in these very endangered areas in Mexico and in the United States. But like anybody can learn how to grow mushrooms in a shoe box sized box in your closet. Basically, it's very easy, very accessible if you get the right coaching, right guidance. And the same thing about how to use the psychedelic medicines. There are some basic guidelines. Surely there are some contraindications, as there are for driving a car or drinking coffee. But like with proper education, it is possible that beneficial aspects about these mushrooms become available to a far wider population of people.
They're a tool that have been used throughout human history, and I think you said it perfectly earlier when you said the current prohibition is really a blip on the map. It's inevitable. You can't keep these tools with such a huge beneficent potential and life-changing potential out of the mainstream consciousness of people for very long. The interest is something that's probably embedded somewhere in our DNA to have a relationship with either plant medicines or, more specifically mushrooms. And so I think it's inevitable that we're going to see this tidal wave come crashing through. It's only by dragging these things out of the darkness are we going to really learn all about them and how to make sure we use them for the highest potential. Why don't we talk about where people can find and connect with Fungi Academy?
Amazing. Thank you. This has been a great talk. People can find us on fungiacademy.com. There is information in there. And also, if you want to be part of the Sacred Mycology online school, then there's a way right now to sign up to be first in line to be notified about this. We have Instagram, we have Facebook. We are very active on Instagram, so that's a really good way of joining the conversation and seeing what life in Fungi Academy is like and what we're also doing right now. If you find somehow that you're inspired by this talk, or you want to come and join, or you want to co-create, or you want to just reach out, then you can reach me, Oliver, at fungiacademy.com.
Terrific. And I do encourage people to follow the Instagram, especially because some of the images of Lake Atitlán, the land around Fungi Academy, it's great seeing the tribe and all the work you're doing, but some of the shots of the land where you are and the lake, it's all magical. And just every time you come through it, when you're scrolling through, it's like a little blessing on your feed. Now, a couple final questions for you personally, just to get to know Oliver a little bit better. What is a mushroom that you love and why? It doesn't have to be a favorite. And I might say you can't say cubensis just because we talked so much about it. And I think that's probably your favorite. Maybe what's another mushroom that you love and why?
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. Cubensis would have been immediately my thing because it has asked so many from me. Well, oyster mushrooms, like all of the Pleurotus, anything that has to do with oyster mushrooms, I find it just an amazing mushroom to start your cultivation with. It's easy. It forgives you a lot of your mistakes that some more trickier mushrooms don't. And it has such a variety of applications. It's amazing food. It's also great for you medicinally. It has the potential to remediate pollution from our environment, filter water, like all of these things. It's an amazing mushroom, grows super fast. It can be grown in a variety of different climates as well, and indoors, outdoors. So it's just, I believe that is, like one of the working horse of the mycology industry. Anybody who wants to start growing mushrooms definitely should consider oyster mushrooms as part of the beginning. Psilocybe cubensis is a great one if you're interested in psychedelic medicine, but like for food, oyster mushrooms, amazing mushrooms.
And they're so abundant. They make so much food. That's a great one. If you were able to speak to an 18-year-old Oliver, what advice would you give him, or what message would you try to impart to him?
Just like, you're doing great. Just keep going and be open. Be open to the stuff that is happening around you, and listen and tune in. Find ways of connecting with yourself and with the nature, and the solutions are coming from there. And also be aware of timing, like the fact that something isn't happening right now or isn't happening when I want or you want it to happen doesn't mean that this thing isn't happening at all. Grit and perseverance is necessary whenever you're building something of meaning, and the universe will throw curveballs to you to test how committed you are. in it. So like I think this is a really important part. And the other part is like build a good relationship with yourself. Like really like find time, find love in your art for yourself, because once you have that, you have the support of absolutely everybody else as well. And so from there it can start growing. Something truly meaningful can grow from the soil of self-love.
And I felt the self-love that you've been able to cultivate when the first thing you said was, you're doing a great job. Man, sometimes we all need to tell our 18-year-old selves that, or our current selves that, you're doing a great job.
Yeah. And I think most people are doing a great job, even if it like there's some comparisons next to it, but like with the experience and the knowledge that you have right now, all you can do is your best, and that isn't maybe your best in a year from now. So like gentle and loving.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final question, what is the lasting impact that you hope that you make with all your work around mushrooms and Fungi Academy? What do you hope is the lasting impact from that?
I hope that it part of this movement, of this flow that is catalyzing a worldwide re-embracement of fungi as medicine, as food, but also as psychedelic allies of self-growth and living a life that is more meaningful, more fulfilled, and in service to others. So we are just doing a small part. There's so many organizations, amazing, and some of them have been in your podcast as well, and they are doing a great job, and this is happening globally right now. And so I just want us to be part of that, because it is not a question of like if it's happening, like where do you want to be in this global situation of psychedelic renaissance and also reconnecting with nature.
And I think you guys are definitely a firm part of that wave of change that's sweeping across society. I definitely think you guys are doing your part. So, Oliver, thank you so much for taking the time. We've navigated the internet from Guatemala and time differences, and I know you're extremely busy. So thank you so much for making the time and having this conversation. I'm feeling really inspired, and I think all the listeners will be as well.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, and thank you for the work you are doing and putting out there. It's also super inspiring.